Music is a very unique, continuously living art form. You know, every player searches for their own identity. I don't know what that's gonna sound like for me. I mean, today, yes, tomorrow, no idea. The guitar more or less opened up the world into creating, discovering my own sounds and kind of finding my own path musically. All these songs that I was hearing and all these cover songs that I was playing, I loved them. I just got really interested in the thought that maybe I could make up my own stuff. And I never had a journal because I had a guitar. I think for me, it was a slow realization that guitar was gonna allow me to create, and knowing that that was gonna be what I could paint with.
But I don't want good and I don't want good enough. I want can't sleep, can't breathe without your love. Front porch and one more kiss. It doesn't make sense to anybody else. Who cares if you're all I think about? I've searched the world and I know now it ain't right if you ain't lost your mind. Yeah, I don't want easy, I want crazy. Are you with me, baby? Let's be crazy.
We listen to everything as a family. We listen to Cajun music. We listen to, you know, my dad would listen to everything from Percy Sledge to James Brown to Fleetwood Mac to, I mean, he was all over the map. My first instrument was accordion, and then it was guitar. Robert Duvall actually gave me my first guitar. I was 5 at the time. I was 4, actually, come to think of it. He had come to Louisiana to shoot a movie, and he was at a restaurant that I was playing at one night. He kind of told everybody, you know, my parents and everybody there, I guess, that he wanted to like make this really cool like sort of church scene where everybody was playing music and doing the thing, and he wanted a lot of local music. So long story short, we all were kind of part of this scene and kind of got to hang out with him a little bit, I guess, and he hung out with my folks, my mom and dad, and he surprised me for my birthday with my first guitar. It was a little tiny, about that big. It was a little Samick. It came with an amp, and the amp had a little overdrive little button on it. And I think, if anything, that was the turning point. Like, it was a whole new level of, you know, an instrument with an endless amount of options and variables and expression sort of things, and it kind of was like opened the door to like this whole other part of the house that you'd never seen before, and you were like, whoa, yeah, okay. So here's the funny part. My parents aren't musical in the slightest, and my mom, she got an acoustic guitar. I think it was a gift maybe for Christmas or her birthday or something. She took lessons for 2 weeks because she said, I want to be able to play basically with me if I had like an acoustic gig and I was by myself playing accordion. That's hard to do. So she was like, I'm going to learn to play guitar so that I can like play with you. So she took these 2 weeks of this class that basically, you know, was like 1 chord a day kind of deal. And she would come home and she'd show me. I had my little Samick and she had this big giant red acoustic guitar. And she'd show me the chords, and my fingers were so small that I couldn't play the chords the way she was teaching them to me, right? So I found my own kind of versions of them, I guess. Of course, I was playing in a band at the time, so I'd watch when we'd play or when we'd practice, I'd watch the guitar player and like his voicings, and like they were totally different. So I'd be like, Fabian was his name, Fabian Champagne. And I'd ask him, I'd be like, Fabian, show me your voicing. And so a lot of my voicings come from his sort of playing. He would show me this whole thing. He'd show me the bar chord. He'd show me a couple other things and little voicings here and there. I kept kind of practicing those chords, and Mom never really played again. I don't know if she got bored with it or what it was, but she literally never picked up the guitar again after that. But I took those chords and I ran with them. I can't tell you that I remember the first guitar sound that I ever heard. The closest thing to it probably is I grew up around a lot of Cajun music. Rhythmically speaking, like that's where I got a lot of like early influence, right? Watching these guys and these Cajun bands, and it was it was a lot of percussive elements, so there was a huge responsibility on the guitar player to be like upbeat guy. You know, that kind of thing, right? There's a lot of sort of counter rhythm type stuff that I grew up with, a lot of very clean guitar, lots of headroom, which I think is why I sort of instinctually gravitate towards those kind of things. That's why I fell in love with the Strat, or the Strat sound, that single coil, clean, a lot of headroom, really punchy. And even when I started playing guitar, I think my right hand sort of just wanted to hear that expressive, dynamic sound. And even still, I'm not comfortable unless I've got that headroom and that almost borderline uncomfortable clarity. So I played accordion for a long time, and we were playing a lot of Cajun music. I guess you could call it covers. Yeah, they were covers, because they'd been around, some of them since the 40s, some of these songs, all in Cajun French. Some of them I knew what I was saying, some of them I had no idea, but they were popular, and all my favorite artists were singing it. But then I think the guitar more or less opened up the world into writing my own stuff, discovering my own sounds and kind of finding my own path musically, I think. That's when I really got interested in country music. I started watching performers, like this guy named Wayne Toops was always one of the coolest performers because he had this awesome band. They were always like so tight. Every weekend you could go and watch a show, and every weekend it would change just a little bit. There'd be like a little accent hit here, and everybody in the band would do it, and they'd hit it right on the money. No click tracks, no nothing, just feel. And it was just incredible. So there was that, and then there was listening to people like Garth Brooks and Brooks and Dunn. I was obsessed with Diamond Rio. And all the while, there's like all these like blues influences too, because there's a lot of blues in modern takes of Cajun music, and this thing called swamp pop. It's kind of like this mixture of all of those things, Cajun, blues, a little bit of like Motown kind of influences. It's really cool stuff. And I find that it makes its way into a lot of my music in sort of the blues way. All these songs that I was hearing and sort of all these cover songs I was playing, I loved them. I just got really interested in creating music, writing music, the thought that maybe I could make up my own stuff, you know what I mean? And I think I wanted to, I really wanted to. I don't know what it was, I found this obsession with making something and saying something. And when you're 6 years old, there's not a whole lot to say yet. But still, I was fascinated by it, you know? And I think that led to sort of middle school. You really start to have a lot to say. You have a lot of feelings you gotta sort through. And I never had a journal, I think, because I had a guitar. Branching into my own sound came obviously from watching a lot of guys playing these really clean tones, right? And most often it was a single coiled instrument into a Fender amp. A lot of high wattage, a lot of headroom. So I feel like the sounds that I really loved were like the Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of thing. Clean, a lot of distortion, but still clean, very, very clear, defined notes. You could hear pick attack, you could hear nuances, you could play lightly through it, and you could hear all the things. But it still had this nice sort of like cushion of distortion. And you know, John Mayer was kind of responsible for a lot of that. I feel like because of the time that I grew up in, I kind of worked backwards. Like I found John, and that sort of really cool, like bluesy kind of thing, which led me back to Stevie Ray Vaughan, which led me back to also discovering like Hendrix and all that stuff, which is the opposite direction tone-wise. But that's kind of what I fell in love with, was that sort of Strat sound with a very open amp. didn't have the best, like, guitar amp scenario in, like, high school. It took me a while to get to an amp that I actually owned that got what I was looking for. And it actually ended up being a Fender Basement, of all things. It was, like, super clean, tons of headroom. And that was awesome. And then I had, like, a PV Classic 50 right next to it that was, like, crunched. And they ran at the same time. So I was the most obnoxious guy on stage with these two things. And not a lot of pedals because I didn't have a whole lot of them. You know what I mean? I, like, borrowed a Tube Screamer. So it just took a lot of, like, you know, playing through friend of mine amps and, you know, borrowing amps, borrowing guitars, because all of my guitars up until I moved to Nashville were sort of gifts from guitar players that I played with that said, man, you sound like you would really like this kind of sound. And they were all single-coiled Strat kind of things, you know? This was a gift from a friend of mine, Eddie Baudin. Eddie had a studio in Crowley, Louisiana, and dude, I spent like all of my high school life there. It was like an hour away from home, but I'd go out on the weekends and I'd spend the night in the studio. He gave me the keys. It was like this shed in his backyard that he had converted into a studio. It was a great sounding drum room too. He always had great drums. So if I wanted drums done on any one of my demos or whatever, I went there. And I'd most likely probably finish the demo there like that weekend or whatever, right? And he actually gave me this Strat. And at the time, it had like these super hot active EMGs. And I kind of fell in love with that because they were so like aggressive. But it still had that mid thing that I loved. I don't know what they were. Probably never find them again. And this was kind of somebody's heartbreak guitar because the intro is that whole bended riff that I could never play without a bend kind of function. But this was like my only Strat for a while. My first mandolin actually was a gift from Hank Williams Jr. I was at a jam session with him. A buddy of mine, Rocky Saunier, has this bed and breakfast. Rocky and Lisa have this awesome bed and breakfast in my hometown. Little, really cool, like cabins on the bayou kind of deal. And they've got this back porch, and they get to know everybody. I don't know how. They just know everybody. And Rocky knew Hank. Hank comes over and, like, jams, and I was jamming with Hank, which feels so weird to say. But we were jamming, and I had my mom's acoustic guitar, and he said, I was, like, maybe 11 at the time, and he said, you need something a little smaller that you can, like, wrap your fingers around. So a couple months later, a mandolin shows up, and I believe it was a flat iron mandolin. And it said, it had a pick guard that said, you know, 200 from Hank. I didn't really fall in love with the instrument right away. I love the sound of it, but playing it was just a whole other world because it was upside down. But I started getting interested in Nickel Creek. A buddy of mine played me the last Nickel Creek record, and I really got obsessed with this one record, and then I got obsessed with another record, and then I realized that the mandolin player, you know, Chris, went on and did like a solo project in which he didn't play like any mandolin, he played everything else. But it really made me understand kind of what this instrument was capable of, what it says, what it does, the spirit that it has. I went kind of digging through the music stores, and I played this one at Carter Vintage in Nashville, and I just could not put it down. That makes me happy. I moved to Nashville 8 years ago, I think we figured out. I'd started to kind of the relationship with Universal Publishing, and Mom and Dad and I would always come, like, I guess once a month. We'd take like a weekend trip. We'd leave at night. We'd travel through the night, and we'd come and we'd try to meet with people, network. And it was all about just meeting people and getting to know people and just understanding the business, the town, I mean, every bit of it. We moved right after my junior year in May. Literally the day I was done with school, we played a gig in Shreveport. We went back home, packed. We unloaded the trailer full of music gear. We loaded the house in it, and then we went straight to Nashville. I think there's a lot of people that move to Nashville. There's a lot of people that specifically seek out Nashville. A lot of people are coming here to live, find, or chase down some sort of dream. So there's a good, positive drive vibe here. And Nashville just has this warmth to it. You know, everybody says country music's a big family. I think that's the spirit of Nashville, really, all of it. Everybody's just like that. But the amount of talent that's in this city, it's incredibly intimidating. It really pushes you. You know, you go watch a performance and you're like, man, I gotta get to work. One of the first venues I went to in Nashville was Douglas Corner. A writer friend of mine was doing a showcase, and I was like, I want to play here. This is a cool vibe. I like this place. I saw the band, and I was like, that drummer's awesome. I want to play with that drummer. I don't know why I thought I could, or like it was gonna work, but I was like, I really want to play with that drummer. And turns out he did my first showcase at Douglas Corner. It was a trio. It was just me, drums, and bass. It was really just this magical, everybody really wants to make music. Nobody's there because they have to. Everybody's there because they want to be. And it was all about just feeling like all the players had really sunk in.
I wanna call you mine, wanna hold your hand forever, never let you forget. Baby, I just wanna make you feel wanted. Baby, I wanna make you feel wanted. Wanna make you feel wanted.
I'm obsessed with vinyl. My thing with vinyl is that it's a project. Somebody went through and thought about all this, and somebody meant to put it all together. So when I see it, it's like I finally get to own a piece of it. It's something that you can literally take with you. You get to literally add it to your library. All of a sudden, it becomes part of your home. And to me, it's like anything digital, like whether it's like, you know, listening to it on iTunes or listening to it on streaming anything. It's like seeing a commercial about it, and then seeing the vinyl is like being at the show. The depth of the sound is just like, just brings you into it. It brings you into those rooms, and you're a part of it. I think I've got this. I hope I do. This is Ronnie Millsap. The cover says Inside, which I think I want to say I have this, but I don't know for sure. I'm gonna get it regardless. But Inside was a song that I specifically remember off of his 40 number ones record, which is kind of my introduction to Ronnie Millsap, and I just wore that CD out. I mean, it will not play anymore. But flipped it over and I see Any Day Now, which is absolutely one of my favorite songs. Inside, He Got You, that song. Yeah, that's coming with me. Yeah, I feel like if you play any kind of blues, any kind of Strat type instrument, you have to have studied Stevie Ray Vaughan at some point. It's just messed up if you didn't. Anybody involved with this sound, with this thing, is just a hero of mine. There's absolutely those moments when you play through an amp, you play like part of like one of his riffs, and that's kind of a test. It's like if it handles even remotely in a way that makes you feel like you're really kind of getting close to you're never gonna recreate that sound, you're never gonna replicate that sound. But if it makes you feel kind of something like it, if you can feel like, okay, I feel like I'm channeling that, then it's like, okay, love that amp, love that guitar, love everything involved with this picture, because if it gets you close, then it means something, you know? If anything, I think Nashville had an effect on me in allowing me to see the strategy, the big picture, how everything kind of comes together, and thus kind of like naturally forming this sort of direction with what I was writing and what I wanted to write and what I wanted to say. I'm no longer just writing random stuff. I'm now really focused in on what is my first record gonna sound like? What influences am I specifically gonna make sure that are in here, you know? I mean, obviously, I was obsessed with Garth because he was an amazing entertainer. I was obsessed with Diamond Rio because they had mandolins and three-part harmonies, and I loved that. I was obsessed with Keith Urban because he was a monster guitar player, and Brad Paisley because I had to import his stuff into Pro Tools, slow it down to learn what he was playing. I've always loved Mercy Me because their records have these songs that really kind of have this huge emotional impact on me. They were kind of best friends, you know what I mean? That's the songs that I would like jam to at the end of the day, like if I was having a rough day or even a good day. I don't know, they had a record called Coming Up to Breathe that I think like, I still like musically like think about, because it was just this kind of this heavier rock-driven record, obviously with all these amazing messages in these songs, just really cool stuff. One of my first meetings with Universal, they said, so if you get a chance, you know, next time you're listening to a record, look at the liner notes, you know, and see if there's any common names with all the records that you really connect with. You know, see if there's like a producer maybe that you can really connect with. And I kind of laughed and I looked at my dad and we both kind of chuckled and I said, no, I really want to work with Dan Huff. So there was a meeting that was scheduled and Dan came by early one morning. This was before I had moved to Nashville. Because I remember we were staying at a hotel and I was so nervous. I played through the songs a couple times at the hotel. I remember playing a song and then he listened to a demo that I had worked on. And he literally was like, I'm in. Before the record started, we were gonna try to record some of the record like the way I had done all my demos, which was me playing everything. And then Dan would kind of be the mirror to show me kind of all the perspectives, right? And so with this in mind, like I knew that I would need a space where I would feel free and you know, I had been looking for something, a place where I felt like I could really get away from town. So Dan started talking about this place called The Castle and he was like, oh, look, let's just hop in the car, let's go take a drive. So I was like, I get to ride in Dan's car. We drove out, just walked around it, checked out their list of gear and all that stuff, and it was like my dream place. I was like, I'm all about this place. So my thing was, I knew it would take a while, so we booked The Castle for several months. It was awesome. I didn't realize how spoiled I was at that point, but it was pretty rad. I guess if we're marking the chapters by songs, you have to start with Storm Warning because that was here. That was the first song I recorded for the debut record. We went in and we were all just feeling it, and that's why the riff is an acoustic guitar, just doing kind of a evolved version of kind of like a steel-ish kind of part out of a Cajun song kind of deal. Then you sort of move on from there, you fast forward about a year and a half-ish, and we were recording stuff for Encore, but I wasn't necessarily thinking about Encore, I was thinking about just new stuff. I was just looking at recording new music at that point, you know? And that was kind of where I kind of rediscovered the mix of like acoustic with electric and the celebration of it, but not having like that super heavy like electric side of it. It was just kind of all very light and really, really celebratory in a way. And I got really excited about that. So that led into kind of the next chapter, which begins the record of Storyline. I think most of that record would be marked more by like a flashlight or a You Think You Know Somebody. The record was kind of, it was a bit heavier. It was, I think it was drastically heavier. And then now, moving back into sort of a happier state of mind, I guess, for me, there's a lot more acoustic information. I'm fascinated by, like, the mandolin, which is why it made such a prominent appearance on, like, 21. And obviously, I love acoustic, anything acoustic. It just really drives in this very sort of organic-sounding way. And you pair that with, you know, I don't know, very strategically discovered, you know, electric sounds that don't kind of overdo it. And you've got this really nice, expressive combination of things. I'm obsessed with this shape, which is basically, I mean, I love double O's, double aughts, acoustics, with a larger upper bow. There's something that happens right here that I'm obsessed with. I don't know what it is. It just keeps ringing and resonating and... I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, I've played it on countless, like, just strumming acoustic tracks. It's just, it's so, I don't know what it is about it. This is probably the most, like, open guitar that I have that's not a vintage guitar. It just really opened up quick. When I see an acoustic guitar, I just want to go write. I just want to go build a song, and because it's just instinctual. When I'm holding an acoustic guitar, I feel like I should be writing something. I've always said that I want to write soundtrack. I want to create soundtrack songs, right? Because that's what I call, like, my Mercy Me record, the Rascal Flatts record, or whatever records that, like, really resonate and, like, stay with me. And they keep coming back on my playlist years after I've listened to them because they're just timeless to me, because they're part of life in this best friend kind of way. I want to write those kind of songs. I want to be a part of those kind of songs. And there's something really, like, deeply moving about the thought of that, about being able to create something that does that. I think the drive, the inspiration, the reasons for songs come from everywhere. They come from personal experiences. They come from conversations. It does really kind of come from all over. But the common thread is definitely experiences. You know, whether it's your own or watching somebody go through something is also very fueling to make you want to write about it and talk about it, you know. I think it's really cool that, you know, when we were just starting out with Storm Warning, and I would play songs off of the upcoming record that wasn't even out yet, that people found videos of songs like Faith to Fall Back On, and they would mention it, you know, before the record was even announced. Even going back to Somebody's Heartbreak. I don't even know if the song was out yet. I had just played it a few times, and I got this beautiful letter written from someone who explained why it meant something to them. And it was so awesome because their meaning of the song was not even close to my meaning of the song, which means that not only did they connect with it, but it was theirs. They didn't just relate to the written lyrics, they related to something else in the song. That was a really cool realization that I'm not the only one who listens to music and sort of does that, right? And makes them kind of my soundtrack. But every day when somebody mentions a song like that, I'm sure they think that it's just a mention of a song and just a story. But I take that back with me, and that's fuel. That's not even fuel. That's like, it's such a miracle. It really is. Like the fact that Just the feeling that gives you as a songwriter, as someone who's obviously sharing their life with the world, you know what I mean? There's nothing like that feeling. And when it happens, it's magic. When it comes to writing, I don't know if I really have a process, to be honest with you. I have in the past, and they work for about a month, and then they don't work. And I think that, I don't know, it really depends. You know, every day is going to be a different thing. I find that my nature as a player is very, obviously, it's inconsistent. There's sort of things that happen, and I have to make sure I'm recording when those things happen because I can't just like conjure up those feelings again. Luckily, I grew up in this Pro Tools era of like playlists. There was always endless playlists to try things and just do stuff. And then I'd go back because I like being, you know, I like being on the sort of other side of the recording where I can go back and comp stuff and just sort through sounds and just copy and paste little moments that happened here and there and like find the stuff, you know. I like digging through things. So knowing that, I find that everything I do playing-wise is merely just splattering paint. It's creative, it's experimental, it's trying this, trying that. Sometimes it's recalling things that work because you know that you could play that. Sometimes it's like, I have no idea who's gonna be listening at the end of the solo, but it makes sense that it's all kind of centered around that sort of chaotically creative vibe. We're about a mile away from my apartment at Carter Vintage in Nashville. A buddy of mine said he stopped in and checked it out, and so I decided to stop in myself, and instant regular. This is kind of one of my favorite places to just come and hang out. Even if I don't really have a need for anything, I'll just come and shop and learn, and it's kind of it's a form of research that's kind of hands-on, right? But they've got like all the double-aught, single-aught acoustics the stuff that I love. And these mandolins from the 20s and 30s and just history, tons of history. When it comes to buying something vintage, it's a new concept for me still. I've only been checking out vintage instruments for the last couple of years, and I'm very careful when I do get a vintage instrument. For one, I want to make sure that I'm absolutely connected to it and that it has something that I'm looking for or that I just feel something with it. And I guess I look for mid-range voiced things. I like things that keep breathing. There's no threshold in which it just chokes. You know, I like things that are just continuously pushing and opening up. You know, like one of these Ds up here, I remember playing a while back. Some of them were more open than others, and some of them were just louder than others. And that one was the perfect combination. It was set up beautifully, it looked awesome. But every time I picked it up, it just sang. It was so boisterous, and there was no point at which I felt like I was hitting it too hard. My right hand is really almost too aggressive. It's very relentless. But I think that's why I connect with instruments that have a high threshold, that have a high headroom, because it allows me to really get emotional. You can get really soft, and you can play those sort of soft parts, but then you can really just dig into it, and it keeps going with you. It's never gonna stop and say, I'm done. It just keeps going. I think finding instruments that really speak with you and are on the same page as you, having that gives you this confidence. It kind of makes you feel like you're not the only one that wants to make music. There's something here that wants to make music with you. I'm very slow though when I buy a guitar. Like, I always shop. I always play, I try. Sometimes I've taken a guitar into the studio for a couple days and almost loved it, but I couldn't not let it go. And I took it back and I said, you know what, I knew that someone is gonna find this guitar and they're gonna not be able to live without it. I'm not at that point. There's no point in me holding this guitar when there's somebody out there that needs to play this guitar. I prefer knowing that I can't live without it. So this was my first like hollow body electric, and it was also one of the first guitars that I really had like an actual like dedicated humbucker setup. So it's so funny, I play humbuckers differently. Anytime I grab something like this, I'm immediately thinking different. I'm just responding to the way the guitar wants to be played. So if I'm gonna play it on stage, I'm like, going for the, the really aggressive kind of approach, It's like, well, it doesn't have the snappiness that I'm looking for, you know what I mean? And no, this needs to be just that. I feel like the strings are the most vulnerable variable because they change quickly. You have to change them often. Why? Because they deteriorate. So when you're talking about that, it's really important to have something that you trust. I remember a friend of mine was in a band called River Road, and every pick actually had Ernie Ball on it. I was like, what is this? So when I went to the store, I saw that it was strings. And literally, I've tried quite a few, actually. The ones that I play are the M steel, but anytime I tried anything different, the performance just of the string it disappeared pretty quickly. My live touring setup hasn't changed in about 3 years. It's been the same basic concept. It's 3 amps. Right now, it's those 3 in the center. A 67, a 62, a deluxe non-reverbs, and a little scoop, so that's like a rhythm channel. That's pretty much everything. The 62 is like a solo channel. And then that's kind of like a 58 deluxe. And that just runs either super clean into a 112, or it runs nothing but delay, just strictly delay. I love delay. I don't know why. I've always loved delay. I've always had delay somewhere, and I've always tried to kind of separate it so that it's going through a different cab, just so that the solo is sort of just clearer, and it's nice to have the separation. Music Man has the Cutlass, and we were talking about maybe doing like a signature thing, and I said, okay, well, my dream is a single coil that's a little bit brighter so that you can get a lot out of it at low volume. And then I really wanted brass saddles on the tailpiece, strictly to get a little bit of that kind of Tully thing, but I also really wanted to try having a piezo in the bridge. It's so crystal clear and emotive, and I had so much fun with it the first night. I'm honestly just stoked that there's a guitar out there that kind of does all the things that I'm always looking for guitars to do. I think I'm always chasing something different. 2 weeks ago, it was different from what I'm chasing like today, when I'm thinking about how I want to start the next record and where I want to go to start it and how I want to approach it. It's very different from where I was even a week ago. It's changed a lot. And it happens as you continue to write. You get 100 songs for a record, hopefully dwindle it down to like 10 that you kind of like. And it's just the more you kind of study what's going on and kind of what different like people are resonating with. Maybe you're playing it live, maybe you're playing it for friends, maybe you're playing it for everybody in the team. But it is kind of constantly changing. I absolutely love being on the road. I think since I was, in elementary school, watching people on stage and knowing that people get in these buses. And I've always been obsessed with buses too. I've always been obsessed with being on the road. I've always been obsessed with like bus design, because that was a way for me to kind of like visualize my dream of being on the road. That was my way of kind of picturing what being on the road would be like. In high school, I had these pieces of paper that I'd draw on, and I'd do these fake schedules. I'd do like a fake day sheet, if you will, and it would show me kind of like what my day would look like if I was on the road. And I would literally look at my watch and just pretend I was there all day long and just imagine what it would be like. Like right now, we'd be rolling in, right now it'd be loading in, right now it'd be sound checking, right now it'd be showtime, whatever. It's like my head was always kind of there.
Somewhere between darkness and light, and the gray where we live between wrong and right. Whether I'm lost or I'm washed in the river, you love me a saint or a sinner.
I love being on the road. I love waking up in a new city every morning, and I love knowing that I get to play there that night. I think just traveling in general, just the momentum of traveling, the conversations you have on the bus at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to solve the world's problems with your buddies, you know what I mean? It's like with every question that you get answered, you have 25 more questions. And the conversations you have, the people you meet, the stories you hear in coffee house and things like that, and the perspectives you gain are just out of this world. I feel like that much change just keeps it about the spirit of music. I like that right there for lead.
Boy Scout.
I don't know, that's just where I've always wanted to be. I love that every day is different. I love nothing stays the same. There's no routine. Some days that can be frustrating, but most days it's beautiful. That's the dream, and after 200 shows a year for 4 or 5 years now, it hasn't changed. And I don't think it's gonna, because I absolutely love it.
Awesome.
Thank you, brother.
We're going the right direction.
Yeah, we are. That feels fantastic. Oh, man. If I'm riding on the road or whatever, I love riding at the end of the day. You're just coming off of that energy from the stage, and it does absolutely just light a fire. I find myself on the road a lot lately, just kind of feeling a musical thing on a show day that I'm just kind of wanting to hear, wanting to build, just go into the back lounge of this bus and with my little studio, which, fits in a backpack these days. It's typically just kind of me messing with musical ideas. I've got like, my laptop or whatever, and we're just kind of start programming this and programming that and just getting general cheesy sounds, but the idea of something down, right, musically. But it's kind of a matter of building this sort of fake demo of sorts to play to and to sing to, because it gets you hyped up. It gives the song momentum some days, and I really need that some days, I think. Kind of allows me to establish something and just say, okay, that's the roadmap. Now, what do we say? What do we want to say? How do I say it? And you start messing with stuff, This one, it's always been like my bus guitar. It's been there, like I've written so many songs on it, and I've played a lot of tracks on it. I've played tracks, like I've literally recorded tracks on the bus with a really cheap microphone, and what any engineer would look at and go, well, that's pathetic as far as the setup goes, but we keep it because there's stuff that happens. There's these moments that happen in the back lounge of a bus at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we've kept a lot of those kind of things that have happened on records. A lot of pieces from demos make it to the record. However, the record process is more about taking the emotions that already exist and then accentuating them even more and finding a way to go deeper into that. And then there's a completely different side, which is taking the record and putting it in a live scenario. There's a responsibility to play the record the way that it's heard, the way that it's out there. But there's also a very fine line to me personally, and this is just me, this is just my fingerprint. But what thrills me is taking what is the record, what is sort of accepted as the record, whether the version of the song that we should be working from, and kind of pushing it and changing little things here and there, not making it unrecognizable, keeping the heart of the song, but making sure that the song has room to continue to grow and continue to breathe. And I think that the fans definitely know that when they come to 2 shows in a row that some things are going to be drastically different from the night before. And that's what keeps it kind of moving.
I'm booking myself a one-way flight.
I'm obviously a production freak, so getting to design something for an arena, I've been practicing for forever. I've drawn on the side of my notebooks for, my entire life, designing stage sets and stuff. And this was a combination of the first really cool moving set that I had ever kind of built. And we did this thing where everybody got wristbands and they all lit up and we got to control it. They became part of the show. So the whole room was lit up with colors and graphics going in circles and cool things. And all those things kind of came together. We started the first night, we started with Storyline, and it was just this incredible euphoric feeling that we had built this really fun show that we were all super stoked about. We were trying new things with these wristband lights and all this stuff, and more importantly, someone showed up, and the whole place was packed. And that was the thing. I think the wristbands kind of accentuated the fact that for every wristband that you saw, for every light out there was a person that had chosen to be there. And I think that's what was so emotional about it, was not just did you see it and you were on a stage and there were lights in your eyes and you could kind of see. It was a shining, we're here moment. And I think that was just kind of too trippy for me to process during the song. And I spent that entire tour just out of breath.
I just wanna wrap you up, wanna kiss your left side, I wanna make you feel wanted, and I wanna call you mine, wanna hold your hand forever, and never let you forget it. Yeah, I wanna make you feel wanted, and baby,
I guess my favorite thing about playing arenas is challenging ourselves to kind of keep this sort of conversational aspect of a club where it's you never feel like productions kind of put a wall between you and the show, but also have a production that's big enough to just absolutely create an experience, but never letting that experience become the show. It still has to be about songs, music, and conversations, connections. Hey, just throwing this out there, there may be audibles tonight. Okay. I'll make sure to do it when everybody has a standard instrument on. Easy is not here right now, so he's on his own. He'll totally figure it out. Yeah, standard. The one thing you can build and prepare and rehearse is the show. The one thing you can't rehearse is the stuff in between the songs where you're talking, you're goofing off, or the jams that happen. That's where the sort of conversational connection comes in. That's some of the best moments we have in the show. We talk about it after the show, is when something just happens that didn't have to happen. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't scheduled, it wasn't, in the set list. But a magic moment happened in the middle of the song and everybody grabbed onto it. Somebody hit an accent here, next chorus around, everybody grabbed it with them, that kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff I absolutely just applaud, and I make sure to make a point now to kind of point those moments out, because those are the moments when I'm on stage and I feel yeah, this is what I'm looking for. This is what we want. We want to feel this way,
Wait.
Okay, I can. Yeah. I forgot that order.
21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. WKU!
Nailed it. That's some of our worst work.
it's good to feel like it's family, and that's the dream, and I feel really lucky that that is the case. Even before I moved to Nashville, my team was my mom and dad. We were a family, and we figured it out. They didn't know a whole lot about the business. They didn't know a whole lot about the music in general, but it didn't matter. We made it work. We figured it out. I would have never guessed that it would start with a publishing deal, and then I'd move, and then it would be, you know, a record deal, you know, shortly thereafter. Looking at the chronology of all that, it's like, it's absolutely nuts to me. The amount of just godsend miracles, this was supposed to happen. I don't know how this happened, but it did. Kind of moments that have happened and continue to happen and still happen, and I literally am spoiled. I'm surrounded by people who still feel like family. That extends to everybody that comes to a show, that checks out a record, that talks about a song in a meet and greet. Everybody says it takes a village, it does. It's so many people, considering how many people work so hard to make all this happen on a daily basis. It still feels like they're all family. It still feels like we all care for each other in and out of the business part of it. And I think that's what makes good music. When people come into a studio and they all care about their craft and they care about each other, you feel that, you hear that in music. I don't know how, but you do. I thought about the things I wanted to tell myself. If anything, I would just go back and keep saying, don't worry, it's gonna make sense someday. Don't look at an idea and think that it's not gonna work. Don't ever think about anything that you're doing, just make music. For every 10 songs, there'll be one you like. Spend the time in the studio, keep writing. That time spent in my home studio when I was totally by myself and I didn't really feel like I had any friends or whatever, like, I knew then that those lonely times, those times where I took whatever time I had and just went back and I was just like, I want to finish this demo. I want to keep working on this. That thrilled me. That excited me to be in the studio. Even if I was lonely or whatever it was, it thrilled me to just keep working on music and to keep doing that. And I think that gave me a perspective, at least. That said, okay, well, if this keeps firing you up, if this keeps thrilling you, if this is where your heart's at, then just don't think about it. Just keep doing this thing, you know? There's a purpose for this. There's a reason that this is happening this way. And I wrote a ton, and I spent a lot of time just making demos, and I'm so grateful for that time. I feel like I was made to make music. It's me. It's not to be cheesy, but it is who I am. It's what I live for. I wake up in the morning thinking about it, and I lose sleep over it. And I love that. I absolutely love it. I live for it. I hope that in 10 years, I'm doing the same thing. Maybe bigger stages. Maybe we can build a bigger show and make this thing just bigger. Hopefully there's songs that reach a lot of people. That's the dream. Keep going, just keep writing, keep creating. You know, there's never really I sit back in the chair and go, all right, well, that was fun. There's never that. There's always what's tomorrow, you know?